For 4 days, 300 souls lived inside a bubble of music and connection. It was called the Jacob Collier Hideaway. It was a truly transformational experience, a place where everyone embraced exploration, openness, and curiosity. But what happens when you leave this bubble? When you're scattered back to your own corner of the world? For me, the experience was too meaningful to let it fade into a distant memory. So this podcast is my anchor, a space to share who you are, stories, inspiration, creative aspirations, and struggles. These are Hideaway Stories. And to begin each episode, I asked every guest to bring a song, a sound, a jingle that is meaningful to them, that inspired them. And this is the sound for my next guest. Gavin, what is this sound and why did you choose this?
Well, I was caught off guard when you asked me to find a sound that has some sort of meaning or represents something in my life, because I realized that as much time as I focus on sounds in my day-to-day through work or through play, that I didn't actually have something that wasn't like music, and I felt like it would be corny to just send you a song or a recording or something like that. Um, because there was something more like quintessential I was looking for, I suppose. But I dug that out of my recording files that I had found in my phone from almost, I think, a year or two ago. And I realized that it represented something really unique to my personal journey through creativity and songwriting and that sort of thing. That sound, and for the background, I live in Charlotte, North Carolina, down in the U.S. Southeast. So I live in the city, but the unique part about Charlotte is surrounded by the city is a bunch of great places to go see nature. We've got the Appalachian Mountains right nearby. We've got the beach not too far away. The Piedmont region has some beautiful spots to go and check out. That particular recording was me walking through a creek in a little bog area where the creek kind of pools up with a bunch of scum and nastiness. It was pitch black, middle of the night in the summer, and it was raining. And I had gotten myself in that situation about 2 miles off the trail because I had gotten so deep in a songwriting walk, as I call them, that I found myself there soaking wet, surrounded by these sounds, and it was just a magical experience. I mean, hearing it on a phone recording does not do it justice, but it was just this orchestra of rivets and raindrops on leaves and the rushing of the stream and all this crazy noise in nature that you can only really find specifically at that frequency here where I live. And the reason I shared it and the reason it relates to songwriting is because I am a songwriter. I guess I didn't mention that at the beginning, but part of my process as a songwriter is finding a way to tune the antenna, so to speak, to find the signal that allows me to get the words that I need for a song or get the melody. And the way that I do that is I walk around for as long as I have to until I find it. And so in that particular instance, I was walking, and I ended up 2 miles off the trail of where I intended to be, because a lot of times when you're songwriting, that's just what tends to happen, is you end up really far off the conceptual trail. But it really requires that amount of tuning the antenna to actually find the idea. And so those frogs, to me, were a moment in recent exploration where the antenna found the signal. And so it has less to do with the actual sound and more to do with the place I found myself off the beaten path that actually turned into something greater than just me and my ideas. It was the universe and the antenna and just being in the right place in the right time, or the wrong place in the right time, depending on how you look at it. So,
And what did it give you? Like, what did you when you walked there? Give me the scenario of like you were struggling to find the song, you didn't have the tuning for the antenna, or were you already in it and it inspired you even more? Like, what was the song about? Do you remember? Like, what? Give me the background of the situation, please.
it's funny. I don't remember what song I wrote that day. I could probably dig through and look at the dates on my notes app versus the dates of that recording, but it may not be worth it. Um, what it gave me was a sense of a release of immediate synapses of the rest of the world, and an immersion into that space that was just totally unique, and really eye-opening to just soaking in what the earth can provide to us via sensory depth. It's hard to put words on it. But I live in a place where there's a lot of hustle and bustle and people all around, and it's hard to, unless you go off the beaten path in that way, it's hard to remove the noise and sort of the static signal. And then I'll probably go back to the antenna analogy quite a bit. But there's all this static signal in the airwaves. And as an artist, as a producer, a creator of any kind, music, woodworking, visual art, doesn't matter. Our job is a lot of times to tune out those bad frequencies and tap into a frequency that allows for the creative muse to kind of flow in. And so, your question was, what does it mean? What does that sound mean to me? I'm sorry, what was the question?
Yeah, yeah. What more or less? What did it give you? Like,
What did it give me?
please, yeah, please.
It gave me a release from the noise that was blocking my creative flow, and introduced me to a noise that to me was inspiring enough to break me out of my day-to-day grind and into this new immersive experience, a complete overhaul of, I think, what a lot of things that was driving my writer's block at the time, which is a pretty common theme anytime I go on these sort of walks or try to get away to focus on one thing and put all my energy into songwriting.
So tell me, is this a ritual? Do you do this often? The songwriting walks?
I do. I try to write as much as I can, and it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't actually always have to be a walk, I find. There are times where I just jump in the car and I'll drive on the highway, and I may have had a destination that I was going to that was far enough away, but let's say it was a 40-minute drive. There are times where I've taken an hour and 20 minutes to get to that 40-minute location, um, because I start to get the sense that there's something in the airwaves that's floating over top. And if I stop this journey, that I won't be able to tune the antenna correctly to pick it up. And so sometimes it requires sort of a distraction, sort of a sensory input that allows for you to pick up those airwaves. There's an
That's
artist,
so interesting.
yeah, there's a
I
producer. You may be familiar with Rick Rubin. I'm sure
Oh
you are.
yeah, of course,
Yeah,
yeah.
he wrote a book called, I think it was called "The Creative Act: A Way of Being," where he talks a lot about that, and he mentions things like, Andy Warhol would turn on a radio, turn on the television, turn on the dishwasher, turn on every machine in his house, and just create this sensory static that drowned out his thoughts. And it was just enough input not to overwhelm him to the point where he couldn't think clearly, but enough to kind of quell the state of the mind that's focused on things that should be quieted in order to create a space for creativity. I know Kurt Cobain had a similar thing. He would turn on a TV and start playing the guitar, and the TV would just kind of be in the background talking to him. But it quiets the mind in a sense, and so sometimes a long car ride or a long nature walk, something that you're giving yourself just enough sensory focus to pull away from the mundane day to day that blocks your creativity, but at the same time releases creativity because you have to focus on the trail in front of you or the dividing lines on the highway just enough so that you're not thinking about work or you're not thinking about an issue you're having in a relationship or whatever. Or, I mean, maybe those could be inspiring things to you as well. The point is just enough of that sensory input to block sort of where you're at in life to open you up to where you could be in a broader creative sense.
Um, I think the one through line I realize is that I'm going to jump around places and have so many questions that will definitely exceed this conversation. But and I want to stay there this time. I'm not jumping around now, but just a small side note or like side quest.
Yeah.
Just so that I have a bit of a reference to be more in your world. What kind of genre, like what kind of music do you write? What kind of, is it very diverse? Is it more like, what kind of area you're leaning in?
Well, that's a tough question. It's it's I would say it's diverse in the sense that there's a separation between the artist and the writer, for me at least. Um, I think that
I agree.
yeah, there's what drives a creative person is a big question to answer this question. And like for me, I'm driven in a lot of ways by the writing process itself. Not so much the performance aspect. I know there's a lot of artists out there that are like being in front of people and playing and performing. They have a knack for it. But it really is a driving force behind their craft. For me, the driving force has always been writing and the tingly feeling you get when you write an amazing lyric or some really cool hook. And so the problem is I'm not a performer. I'm not an insanely talented musician. So I often write in a wide variety of genres because I don't get to decide what the universe zaps into my antenna. I just get to transcribe it, right? Um, as an artist, because there's a separation here, I would say I do like for myself, I really like the very folky genres, kind of alternative stuff, not rocky, but a lot of acoustic driven folky stuff. I grew up listening to a lot of like Ray LaMontagne with some soul elements. There's some southern rock stuff sprinkled in there. I live in the U.S. South, and so growing up here, like American blues has been a really really big part of my uh, existence as a musician, and not like I wouldn't say that the Clapton rock and roll style blues, but like really the quintessential campfire around an acoustic guitar, Nashville sound kind of deal. Um, is a huge part of me as an artist. As a
Mm.
writer, I've written pop songs that I'm like, oh, this would be great for Mariah Carey. I could never, I could never perform this, but this is an amazing
Mm.
song without me, and I'm happy to let it be just that, you know.
Now I want to come back to, because now I have a ground, like I'm grounded into like what your process is, what your kind of music is. Let's get back to this. You mentioned so many things: frequency, tuning the antenna, then the art and the artist kind of thing, the songwriting aspect of it and the performing aspect of it, and the sensory, how did you put it? Sensory deprivation is too much, like the calming down these empty voids where the mind is too loud, so
Hmm.
drowning that out a bit.
Yeah,
um my question, making a question from that, because I have 20. When you Let's go back to driving with the car or walking.
sure.
Is there, when you say tuning the antenna, is it always, do you have a sense of the frequency? Like when you're connected, can you feel it in your body, or is it, what happens when you know you're tuned right?
Well, you definitely know. And I want to preface all this by saying, like, the antenna idea itself is not an original idea from me. What I'm doing is I'm using
Yeah.
the best language out there that I know of to express how I feel. And so these applications are my thoughts, but a lot of it does come from things that I've read on how to express the artistic medium the best way that you can as an artist. And it's not specific to music, but it's just the best way. And this antenna analogy is a Rick Rubin thing as well. Um,
And
the what?
I'm asking you, like, how is it for you personally? Like,
Uh,
because I wouldn't, I know this metaphor, I know the analogy, and I think it works, but it doesn't feel to me like that, like frequency, like
yeah,
it's a bit different for me, and that's why I'm asking, and I'm actually quite curious because I feel some people, especially if you say artistic medium, and there is just people that can really, it really feels like they're tapped into a frequency, or they can feel it in their body, like it's just a
yeah,
sensory input. And I'm interested in how you feel that you're tuned correctly to this frequency.
yeah. So part of that is I would say almost the biggest part of that is showing up. Showing up to the broadcast station or whatever it is you want to call it, right? I spend an incredible amount of time in my life showing up, and a very little amount of time in my life receiving signals. And what's fascinating about it, because you're asking what it feels like, is the result of what it feels like, first of all, is that I might spend 2 months with no songs and just showing up every day to the songwriting session, like begging the universe for inspiration, going on walks, trying to drown out the noise, trying to tune the antenna, trying to take things out of my life that are otherwise bogging me down, whether it's a situation with friends, family, or whatever. Tuning the antenna, showing up, showing up, showing up. And then all of a sudden, I will get an inspirational wave. And it feels like a spiritual experience in a sense, because I'll write 3 songs in 2 hours out of 2 months of showing up and nothing comes. What it feels like is you hit the exact right emotional awareness in yourself, in your life, in your surroundings. You tap in to the perfect mixture of what's immediately in front of you, what's behind you, and what's coming next somehow, and you are able to put words to a page, and there's nothing as an artist that feels quite like that to me. It's what drives me to keep making music. It's almost to a detriment because I spend more time doing that than I actually do sitting down and producing songs that I write, because it doesn't drive me. What drives me is that sort of almost dopaminergic release of sitting down and finally being able to tap in to the frequency, as if it were given to me as a gift. It's a muse, it's a flow state. It's not something that I own. It's something that I have to go out and explore.
It's so interesting that I'm I'm having all these conversations with the musicians from the Hideaway and also in this podcast. And I think almost everyone mentions that it's somehow a spiritual experience to create. It's we're talking about, like, how's your process, and almost everyone, including you, of course, say, use the word spirituality, or use the word like divine, or use the word something bigger than me, or flow state, or all of these words. And I'm so fascinated that it's so probably different in the individual experience of it, but that it's for everybody the same thing, that it is something bigger than myself.
Yeah.
And the way you describe it is, it almost, I don't know if I put words in your mouth, but if I interpret it, it's like you're saying that you're not, if you're in this frequency or in this tune, it's like you're not separated anymore, like a separate entity to the world. Like there is Gavin and then there's the rest of the world. But it's almost like it's there's no boundaries anymore. Everything is one, like all these things mumbo jumbo that you hear all the time, that like spiritual gurus even talk about, and all of these things that can be dismissed if you're not a spiritual person.
Wow.
But I can so relate to this because it feels the same to me. Like there is no real like individual entity, no ego, no pressure, no I have to do this, I want to do this. All of these things, they're not relevant in this moment. Can you relate to this?
Sometimes it feels like it's not fair to claim ownership from an idea.
Yeah.
Like sometimes you have this idea and you sit there with it and you're like, holy cow, I'm getting that butterfly feeling. Like I just came up with something incredible. And then you realize, wait, I didn't come up with this. I sat and I walked or I drove or whatever. And the universe gave it to me as a gift. And now I'm going to put my name on it. It's like, it doesn't feel like it does the idea justice. And sometimes I'll go back through stuff that I've written and like, rehash it out on the guitar or whatever. And I'll read it and I'll be like, there's no earthly way that my brain came up with that. That was divinely bestowed. So
Can
it is.
you is there something in the recent days, weeks, maybe something that you really cherish, like a 4 lines or something that really tells me this, or that tells you this crazy that I didn't come up with this, like that couldn't have been my personal Gavin thought process in my every day-to-day life?
Yeah, I can as we're chatting, I can try to look through my notes. It's kind of a spaghetti mess of scribbles and things, and try to find
Okay.
something.
Yeah, okay.
We as artists, I think a lot of times you're throwing a lot at the wall, and so there are things
Mhm.
in there sprinkled around through a mess of garbage. And
Mhm.
part of an interesting part of the songwriting process, for me at least, is you write a song once and then you write it a second time and a third time and a fourth time, and you're refining and refining and refining. And so a lot of this stuff might be unrefined, which is why I don't want to just throw something at the wind in the immediate. So let me look, because all in my notes here.
You can take your
Uh,
time.
okay.
And if you don't want to share, that's fine as well, right? I don't want to make you
No,
uncomfortable.
yeah, I'm not shy. I just want to find something that I wrote worth sharing
Mhm.
without music behind it. Well, I could just play it for you if you want me to.
Oh, yeah, that would be even greater. Yeah, please.
I'm not going to say this is the greatest song on the planet. I wrote it 2 weeks ago. It for all you pitch perfect Hideaway retreaters out there, this
Are
might
you perfect pitch?
no, this might hurt a little bit for those fellas.
Okay,
Let's see.
okay. Not for me then.
Are you? You're not?
No, I wish. No.
I have a pretty good relative pitch, but definitely am not one of those cats that can just tell, oh, that's F sharp 7, whatever,
I mean, relative pitch is very important as well, so congrats.
Yeah. It's been a couple weeks since I looked at this, so bear with me here. So it goes.
You can also, if you want, we can cut out like if you want to start over take. I mean, I can cut everything, right? It's not a live stream.
I just wanna talk. Talking's what got us to this mess. And maybe we can talk it out. Go for a walk. I know that walking away is the best thing, but I turned around, changed my direction a couple of times, ran in a circle and found a straight line. Everything leads me back to you. I don't stop. We started out steady and then we forgot where we're heading a lot. Reset the clock. It's taking our time because none of it's real unless you're watching the pot. A couple of times went in a circle and found a straight line. Everything leads me back to you. That's about it for now. I kind of forgot the words there for a minute. But you know, I write these
thanks for
snippets.
sharing.
I write these snippets and kind of just mess around with them. It's funny, like I think I played different chords that time than I must have when I wrote the song. I have a hard time remembering the chords, and I make them up on the spot pretty often. It's sort of the
That's funny.
melody. It's sort of the melody and the words that are the song, and whatever else happens is just.
So you're more of a melody type of writer? Word and melody, is that your thing?
I think those are the elements that I kind of focus on when I'm writing, because I don't have an instrument with me a lot of the time. It's actually very, very, very rare that I write a song with an instrument. Because
And is it but do you have are you lyrics first or melody first?
Probably melody, but it depends. I don't think I have a process in that like technical rule sense. Like here's the rule for starting, here's the rule for finishing. I think often for me, the frogs in the bog tell me what the best way to start is, for lack of better analogy. But I think oftentimes it's a melody, and it's a melody too. Like a lot of times it's a melody that's been bugging me for weeks. Like I'll have this thing this is a great analogy too. Because I mentioned Ray LaMontagne is one of my favorite songwriters of all time. Ray LaMontagne and he writes like an animal. Like he's constantly writing and constantly coming out with new albums. He talks about this idea that it's almost bothersome. Like he's annoyed by it. He gets this little worm in his ear, and it's a melody, or it's a lyric. And if he doesn't put it to page, or bring himself to the songwriter's table and flesh out the idea, it'll be painful for him. Like it's a worm. It's an annoying little thing that just bugs him and bugs him and bugs him. I feel like I get that sometimes too. If it's an idea really worth having, the universe will constantly tell me, okay, here's the fundamental frequency of the signal you're looking for. Now there's overtones and there's things going on that I may need to come to the table to discover, but there's a fundamental that my antennas can't get rid of. It's a static that needs to become a song, So that happens too sometimes.
Mm-hmm. This noise, drowning out the noise, and then when you're driving or when you're walking, maybe you do it longer on purpose so that you more or less stay in this world of the right frequency.
Yeah.
What would come up, like if you didn't have that? If you didn't have your process, what hinders you? Like what blocks this tuning in? Can you, like, maybe that's a bit of a personal question, but what comes up, like if it's...
Yeah. No, that's a good question, actually. Well, life is, if you could boil down living, like as a creature, that we're all creatures, right? A lot of it is what we consume and what we release, what we take from the world and what we put into it, and there's a certain, I think, meaning of life built in there somewhere. But to simplify that, there's so much in the world that distracts me from, or I guess clouds the frequency, right? Right. Today my antennas are not bent the correct direction to find the frequency. And it might be because something bad happened at work. It might be because something bad happened, my friend is mad at me, or I'm upset with a friend about something, um, it might just be that you're tired. You didn't get enough sleep. Uh, there's so many factors that need to come into play in order to tune in and tune out simultaneously. But a lot of it comes down to what is it in your life are you consuming as a medium? That could be as simple and as non-analogous as food. Are you having a healthy diet enough to think clearly, you know? Um, for me, a lot of times it's work. I work a lot, more than I want to sometimes when it comes to, like, creating music. I kind of float. I have a main job and then a weekend job, so it's hard to tune in and tune out when there's this project that's bugging me and there's these deadlines um, because it's compartmentalized. I need to put everything away as best as I can in order to show up to the frequency, to the muse. I need to compartmentalize it, and that's why I go on the walks. That's why I go on the drives. I need to put it all away. So,
Mm, mm. So that's a way to like go out of the regular life
uh,
and yeah, okay. Um yeah, let's go into this. That's very typically my question after half an hour or even longer. Maybe you can tell me, Gavin, like who you are. You already told us where you're from, but um, when you say work, what do you do? Do you make living from music? Is it just a hobby? Like what? Yeah, just give me a bit of background, please.
well, it's hard. I think it does myself a disservice to say that music is a hobby. I don't make a ton of money doing music. It's not my career, you know. But it is a big focal point of my life outside of my day job, you know. So for me, I do music. I just don't do it um, as professionally as some of the guys that we met, as some of the gals we met at Hideaway. But I'm an audio engineer by training. So I went to school for music production. Um, I did some work, like some studio mixing work for a little bit here and there. But now currently I'm an event producer. So I produce technology for live events, conferences, concerts, that sort of thing. That's my 9 to 5. Um, and so what we do is we'll have clients that come in and they wanna throw in a giant, you know, f arena arena experience with a 5,000 attendees, but they don't understand how to integrate the technology and to do that. The jumbotrons, the speaker systems, PAs, lighting, all that. So I provide that as a service to them, sort of a well-rounded production for their live events. And then on the weekends, I work really closely with my church. Um, Here in the Southeast, if you're a musician, a big part of being a musician is religious music. I think it's really rare for me to see a musician in the Southeast that's remotely successful that isn't involved with a church at some in some capacity, because there's so much incredible music in that space, um, where we live. And so I do live sound for my church, for special events, front of house engineer, broadcast audio engineer, that sort of thing. And it's a lot of fun. I really enjoy working with those guys to make Sunday morning happen or to make just to make noise. Anytime I can make noise, I'm happy, you know. So
Oh, that sounds really cool.
yeah.
Um, when you say, oh, I don't even know where to start. Okay, let's start in the beginning. How did you come to music and how did you come to audio engineering?
How did I come to music? I don't know that I ever came to music. Like music was always there for me. I remember early on as a kid. Well, my mother has loved music her whole life and has been a singer, musician, um, and she would always, like, sing to us as a young kid. I remember, like, we didn't have growing up, there were good blocks of time as a young kid where we didn't have a TV, we didn't have electronics. The toys in my house were a lot of times, like very tactile things, including instruments. We always, since I was as young as I could remember, we had a music room. We didn't always have an Xbox or a TV, but we always had a music room. So it was always kind of something that was around. Or long car trips, instead of listening to the radio or whatever, a lot of times we would be doing song games in our family where we would be like, okay, uh, mom is going to sing the one, and everyone else is going to sing the three, the five, and the seven, and we're going to do some barbershop quartet or whatever. Just silly
Wow,
things like
that's
that.
crazy. How
So I
old were
never.
you there?
Well, I think the first time I took piano lessons, I must have been 6 years old or 7 years old. But
Okay.
we were doing fun little music song games as a family since as early as I can remember. So.
Oh, wow. And how did it come to like so you're you've always been you always knew that music is somehow going to be a big part of your life?
Yeah, when I was 12 years old, I remember thinking, "I wanna be a music producer." And I had no idea what that was. Actually, I still don't really know what that is. But I wanted to do it, and I thought it would be really, really cool. So when I was probably 14 or 15 or something, I got an internship at a recording studio here in Charlotte, and I did that for about 3 years, most of it unpaid, where I was running coffee and networking with artists and running cables, that sort of thing. And that was sort of the jump start to my audio career, but at the same time, it was almost like a doubling down of I want to like music there needs to be an aspect of music that I do in my job. Otherwise, I won't be happy. So
So how did you choose audio engineering then? Because I mean,
yeah,
if you have a choice to of the world of music, it's just one niche, right? So
yeah,
how did you choose that?
it felt like the easiest entry point to something tertiary to music. Um, as simple as that sounds, it felt like it was the closest that I could get where I was at, um, and kind of what my interests are. Like I'm not this like I'm not a performer, right? We've just talked about that. I'm not like some multi-math music theory guy, but I am smart, and I do enjoy picking things apart piece by piece and figuring out how they work. So like audio engineering for me felt like an easy on-ramp for that. And I actually found I didn't like it at first, to be honest, because my perception of it was like, oh, we're gonna hang out in the studio with the artists and we're gonna do a session and then and I was like, oh wait, 95% of this is clicking edits and finding drum transients for 6 hours straight until your eyeballs bleed. That was not what I thought it was. But I found a really deep love for audio, and like DSP processing and just tinkering along the way. A lot, actually, mostly later after I left the studio and really got my hands dirty with the technology and started to make money and I was able to buy microphones and play around in Logic Pro and Pro Tools and all that stuff. And then eventually start to work on live sound rigs and big consoles and PA systems. The more that I dove in, the more I started to love it. So it was a really cool kind of experimentation into what could be tertiary to stuff I'm already passionate about.
And you told me before we recorded that the room that you're in is your studio, right?
Yeah, it's kind of a mess right now. I can kind of pan us around here. So I build all these panels here. I got my cool little music note thing there. Um, and I've got like a slide guitar rig, microphones, a bunch of guitars. Most of my guitars are out of the room right now, for acoustic reasons. It doesn't sound great when
Okay.
everything's ringing in here, but there's stuff all over the ceiling. Um, I've got bass traps behind me that are pretty impressive that I built from by hand, and a lot of trips to Home Depot and Hobby Lobby to make it all. But this is the second space that I've built, um, and I as much as I'd love to get super technical, I know a lot of people don't like to listen to that sort of thing, but the entire room is RTA'd. as best as I can with
What is RTA?
it's a special kind of microphone here. I have it somewhere. Special kind of microphone. This microphone is theoretically as flat as microphones can be, meaning there's no coloration. So like your classic 58 or SM57 has got sort of that high end hiss to it. A lot of those like ribbon mics are really precise on certain frequency bands. This one is as supposedly as flat across the line as it can be. And so the idea is set up
And
your
the name of the, sorry, just because I don't know this specific microphone, the name of the model is RTA.
it's a type that's a type of microphone. Yeah. Um,
Okay, okay,
so
okay.
like the way that it's a condenser mic. Um,
It looks like a shotgun mic.
it does look like a shotgun mic. It's Omni. Um,
Okay.
actually, some of them are Omni. Some of them have some directional functionality to them, but the idea is this mic is pretty much an ear as close to, well, even an ear has the Fletcher-Munson curve. So even an ear has some bias to it. This is supposed to be unbiased. And so the idea is you set up your speakers as best you can for a flat listening response. You try to tune it beforehand, and then you play an unbiased noise like a white noise or a pink noise, or a series of sweeps. So right. So you can hear a flat band across the frequency, and then this is your ear, and it'll tell you, okay, if you played an unbiased noise in an unbiased room, but you got a spike with an unbiased microphone, but you got a spike at 500 hertz, well, that means your room has a 500 hertz problem. What do? Well, you have to EQ your PA, notch out 500 hertz by 3 dB, and then try again. And eventually, if your feedback from this microphone looks flat, then theoretically your room is acoustically unbiased, which is great for mixing. I wouldn't say it's great for recording because there's a life to a room that sometimes is quintessential to the process and to the sound that you get. Sort of like with your binaural microphone, you're put in a situation where if you're doing mono recording and trying to pan left and right, well, what are you actually doing? You're not recording a source signal over here. You're recording a room over here, and then you have another room that you're going to put over here, and that sounds weird because you're in four
Yeah,
different rooms
yeah.
simultaneously in different spots. Um, Sometimes a room is just as much an instrument as an instrument. And what I'm trying to do with this space is remove the room as a listening device because I want the room that I recorded in to be the instrument, not the room that I'm sitting in, so that I can make sound mixing decisions without having any sort of frequency overlap. Or it sounds really great in here, but as soon as I get into my car, the car stereo is really pingy or really, really gross because I don't know, but my room has a bias. And so I'm trying to eliminate bias as best as I can.
So now we're going into nerd talk, and I
Yeah.
love it. So please, because I have questions about this as well. You said you built your acoustic panels yourself.
Yeah. Lot of
So
lot of staples.
a lot of what?
Lot of staples. But
Staples.
yeah,
Okay.
it's a lot of upholstery stuff. So
Okay, okay, okay. So how when uh, take me through your process when you hear there is some frequency that is, as you say, bias in the room. What do you do with the room to get rid of the frequency that is too much, too few? How do you deal with it?
well, if I had an infinite amount of money, there are a lot of things I would do, and an infinite amount of
Yeah,
time. Right? What I do is I cheat a little bit. Is
that's good.
first of all, I take measurements of the room. This is what I do where I'm not cheating. I take measurements of the room, floor to ceiling, front to back, side to side, and then based on those measurements, um, there's different applications, and I don't remember. I think REW is a really good one that I used in the past. But you can model a room and figure out where your modal buildups are going to be, and that's just a fancy way of saying, in this particular spot, because of the shape of your room and the materials of the walls, you're going to get a bounce of a certain frequency range that's undesired or desirable based on what you're trying to do. But I'll figure out where those problems are, and then I'll place my panels strategically in those spots to deaden that space. And then if and this is sort of where math might play in a little bit and where I can get a little bit lazy, is that the thickness of your absorption is directly corollary to the the shape of the waveform that's giving you a problem. And so if it's like a 60 hertz bass cycle, for example, you calculate the distance from one amplitude point to another amplitude point, and let's say that that's 8 inches of differential between that. Then, in order to solve the problem there acoustically, you need 8 inches of deadening. I don't have enough money to go in and actually deaden the sound perfectly in every space of the room. I've done the best I can with what I can build by hand. And I've done a pretty good job with it, but I use this software, and this is where I cheat. This is the cheater software. It's called SonarWorks Reference ID. SonarWorks is the company, Reference is the software. And what it does is it says, okay, it uses this guy right here, and it takes your measurements, and you go around the room, and then you say, well, you did the best you could, but you still have a problem at 300 hertz, and it'll try to tune what you're playing out of your speakers with what you're putting into your speakers. It'll try to compensate via real-time EQ. So it creates a little bit of a recording latency, which is really annoying.
So when you do this test to check with this SonarWorks reference ID,
Yeah.
Do you do it at the place where you're sitting, where you're mixing?
The ultimate spot that you're treating is the spot where my ears are sitting right now.
Yes.
The test itself, in order to
So you would put the microphone where your head currently is.
Yeah, you'd put it right where my head is, but then it's about a 30-minute test because SonarWorks wants to measure every point in the room so that it can not only get an understanding of what the best listening position is right here, but in reference to understanding the stereo field, it's got to also do a test over here. It's got to do a test over here, and it'll tell you, okay, now put the microphone 3 feet from the back wall, 2 inches off the right wall. And then you do that, set it up, start the test, and it'll take a reading. And it does, I think, like 40 or so different measurements in different locations. And then it gets a really strong stereo understanding of the room based on how your speakers are positioned, based on where your subwoofer is, all that stuff. And it'll make the best decisions it can after doing that. I don't have the luxury of an amazing space, or amazing equipment, or a lot of time on my hands to actually do the math here. So I like SonarWorks is cheating, but it's the best thing I can do with what I have to work with. There's guys that use REW and will knock down a building and add 4 perfect walls in there, and you may not need any treatment because you've got the perfect parallelogram that you built out of brick and mortar. You've got the best material as your carpeting. You've got the best corner. There's no corners in the room. It's all rounded. You got to go to Blackbird Studios or something like that to find a space like that. But this is what I have to work with. So I use SonarWorks. I use REW a little bit. And then also a big part of it is kind of knowing your room. And after you've sat in a space long enough to mix, you kind of know where the problems are. Like when I mix at church, for example, the first thing I do is I cut out 600 hertz out of the PA. I don't even have to listen for it. I know that we're about 6 decibels too hot at 600. The room is boxy and weird. And then eventually it sounds good just as a starting point from doing that. So you got to figure out where your starting points are. You got to know your room a little bit better, even after all the tuning and stuff and paneling.
And now I'm asking. I find this interesting because I mean, there is bias in the room, but then there is also bias in the listener, right? I mean, the ear for every person is more or less different, and also then there is this unspoken, probably almost taboo that a lot of people and engineers have tinnitus and stuff like that, and some high frequencies are cut off from 15K upwards and stuff like this. That's not much talked about because it might lose sometimes also the trust that this person still can mix and everything. So how do you when you go into the church and you cut out 6 dB in the 600 hertz, how much is that in an objective way verifiable? Like when there's 10 people listening to this,
Yeah.
is this something that Gavin is just has the ear for it, or is it that 10 people can actually hear the difference and say, "Oh yeah, I also think it sounds better"? What do you think?
Um, well, everything is subjective. Um, there, it, so there is no such thing as in audio, and I think really in anything, like unless you're, well, I'll leave it at audio. Nothing is an objective principle. There are rules. There are
Of course, yeah.
things that you could try to achieve, but you're never gonna. One mix is never gonna sound the same as the next, even in a perfectly mastered tape. You're going to play it in a car stereo or an iPhone speaker or AirPod headphones. The mix engineer mixed it for the best common denominator between all those things, but it's never going to sound the same. When I'm mixing at church, for example, um, I will walk around the room and try to walk around and say, okay, it sounds okay over here. It sounds okay over here. It sounds really good over here. It kind of sounds bad over here. But if I make any more tweaks, the balance between the best possible solution might get a little haywire. One thing you can do, and a lot of engineers do, is have one of these, and they will RTA their entire room, and they'll get readouts, and they'll say, okay, at the front house position, the room sounds fantastic, and you play something called pink noise, um, which is an equal amount of perceived sound across the frequency spectrum, from 0 hertz to 20,000 hertz, so that you can see, okay, if I'm playing essentially an unbiased sound, excuse me, and this thing is showing me my bell curve is kind of like this, well, then the room is biased kind of like this, you know? And so there's objective things you can do, but this is not music. This is science. And so you have to find the happy middle ground between what sounds good and what this is telling you. And a lot of times those two things are completely different. And then everyone has a different preference too, right? Like I have people telling me in the same mixing session that it's too loud, while people are also coming up and saying, hey, can you turn it up a little bit? It's too quiet. And I have to be the arbiter of what is correct. And there is no right answer, but we do our best. I have enough experience listening to just kind of know what the pain frequencies are. And that's a big part of mixing, especially in live sound.
Yeah.
Is there
Yeah.
are certain frequencies that are painful to hear, even if they're quiet, even if they're just a little bit sizzly. People don't even know how to articulate that it's painful. They're just like, "Oh, it's too loud." I'm like, "Well, actually, we're hitting 85 decibels right now. The SPL is weak. You just think it's too loud because there's something painful." And if I can find where that pain is, a lot of times I can push the volume up, and you won't even know the difference. You just think it's pleasant, you know?
So how can you give some beginner tips? I mean, I'm also more into producing than I am into like live performance because I cannot even play an instrument. And I think when it comes to audio engineering, I'm definitely not on your level, but I at least know the basics. But maybe you have some tips, like what can we as just normal, maybe hobby musicians, maybe even people who are very professional musicians but don't have this audio engineering background, what can you do that is more hopefully a good fix when you just want to have the basics covered?
Basics. I would say don't overthink it. Is a huge. I think that's relevant in engineering. Period. The simplest design for something is usually the most successful. There's less things that can go wrong. You know, your binaural sound thing is a perfect example. And you could argue that trying to recreate a human head is overthinking it, but I would actually say that trying to recreate a human listening experience using a mono microphone and trying to recreate the room and recreate immersion out of scratch is way over engineering something that we've been given as a gift as animals in the first place, right? Is 2 ears, and the Coachella and the shape of our head and our sinuses that vibrate when we hear something. So um,
That's a good point. Yeah.
maybe that's the wrong answer, but don't overthink it is a big part of it. Know the basics, right? Because if you want to record something in your house, for example, and you try to record it in a bathroom, you have to understand what that is going to achieve. It's going to be very echoey and sound weird. It's not going to translate well unless that's a sound that you're going for. Um, Maybe put a rug in there at the very least. But if you plug in a microphone to an interface, understand that if you're clipping, you're going to get a clippy sound. So those are just like super, super basic things. Those that you can do that will improve your process 1,000%. But don't overthink it. Don't try to do a lot of things that I did early on. I was like, well, I need to set up like a crazy XY stereo solution for this, and try to get my latency down by creating a master device that compensates. And it's like, no, it's like, for what? For a 30-second recording that's going to be the hook of your song? Nobody on the planet is paying attention to what you're doing. All they're listening for is the result, and a lot of times those minute details are here and far between. Like, it doesn't matter.
Hmm. I mean, there is this most simple way of putting it, and it's if it sounds good, it's good.
Yeah, yeah,
I,
yeah.
I mean that is to me, when it comes to compressors, at some point I gave up, like, having another compressor and another one and another one, and
Mhm.
like really trying to understand and making the A/B test, and like, is this 20 or this 2 dB difference in the threshold, or the millisecond in the attack, is it really making this difference? And I just, especially when it comes to compressing or things that are very, very subtle sometimes, I just feel that, okay, does it sound good? That's more or less my criteria. And I, since I don't have a unbiased room, I try to help myself with listening on very many speakers in very many rooms, like having a Bluetooth speaker, an iPhone, a car, like a normal living room, the speakers of my father's living room, like different places where I can listen to a song that I actually want to have somewhere in the world. And that's my way of trying to get it a bit less biased. But maybe that's also overthinking it. But that's at least my way of trying to have this concept.
No, I
Yeah.
love that. I think, first of all, you're absolutely right. If it sounds good, it is good, and I went down the same trap and scrapped a lot of recordings, actually, because of what you're saying is, like, why am I worrying about why am I trying to hit -14 LUFS perfectly and a PLR of, like, 11 across the entire song? Like, what I'm doing is I'm killing the dynamics, I'm killing the breath of the song. Your song, by the way, your Hideaway song is, like, the most beautiful example of what we're talking about, because it breathes so well. Excuse me. And it doesn't fall into this fallacy of we need to compress every single instrument, -3 decibels, and it's gotta have this perfect headroom situation, and you've gotta hear everything crisp and sparkly, and no, it was just, like, sort of this wash of experience, and it breathes, and it goes in and out, and it flows, and yeah, maybe YouTube's algorithm doesn't like it that much, and I think that's too bad for YouTube, honestly, because the song is good, and if it sounds good, it is good. So
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's so funny, right? You're going through all these years and years and years of trying to understand how it works at the minute details. And I'm not. How old are you?
29.
29. So I'm not sure if YouTube already existed for you for tutorials and things like that, but also you studied it. But for me, definitely, I didn't I had to really learn. I didn't know anything that I'm doing. There was no YouTube tutorials. There was nothing. And then when it started, where people actually were talking about how producing works, and all these DJs and all these producers suddenly talking about their producing methods, I was like, oh yeah, I do that. And then I didn't do other things, and oh, I'm going to do what they're doing.
Yeah.
And then at one point, I think that's a tip. Probably everybody has to go through this phase, but when you're producing, just have 10 plugins and that's it. Like all of this.
One tool for every job. One tool.
Just learn this one plugin, like have one compressor, have one limiter, have one, I don't know, reverb, maybe 2 or 3, but really very specific things that do specific jobs, but not the next and the next and the next.
Yeah.
And it's so funny that I had to go through probably 20 years of trying to find it all to go back to, does it sound good?
Yeah, I'm having to
It's
unlearn a lot of things that I learned in school, for example, because what I did in school was very oriented towards radio pop music in the worst kind of way. And for anyone who loves that sound, sorry, you're gonna hate that I say this, but I can't stand the kind of music that I was trained to record. Um, and of course, it's subjective. It's just not for me. I love music that breathes. And so I learned the ins and outs of compression and how to make it work perfectly for every transient. And then I spent weeks and weeks squashing a sound that took me 10 seconds to record and thinking that the final outcome would be great, but you're tricking yourself little bit by little bit because maybe it started out sounding good. A little bit of compression made it sound a little bit more awake and upfront. And then you're like, well, I paid for these tools, so I might as well use them. But you're just killing your baby over and over again. You're just squashing it and squashing it and squashing it. It needs to breathe. It needs to have life. It's like
so
with all,
when you say you hated it, and I can relate to this. I mean, I personally am not a big fan of the charts music, but as you say, that's very subjective. I mean, it's in the charts for a reason, right?
right.
So, um, and of course, there's always exceptions. But when you say you hated it, what exactly was it that you hated about it? Was it the music itself? Was it the way it was produced? Was it the
That's a good question. Um, I this is subjective. I like music. Music has a different purpose for every scenario. Like it's a language. It really is a language, right? I think we mentioned something about that in the beginning. It's a way of communicating an idea more so than anything else. And to me, the language that I look for is a personal one. Like I enjoy music more frequently alone in a room by myself. And that kind of music needs to breathe. But then there's this thing where as a tool for communication, music can be used to sell potato chips, and it's in the background at Walmart. And that's a great application for music too. It's just not the application that I look for as an active listener. And then there's this other fantastic communication tool of music is great at a party. But the kind of music that's great by yourself alone in a bedroom is not going to translate well to the kind of music that'll be great in the background at a social cocktail event, right? Where it's and people are having a good time and talking. I really like active listening music, and a lot of what's on radio, pop, top charts, whatever, is not for the active listener. It's for the listener that wants to casually enjoy a medium of communication without having to really think or challenge themselves. Um, and I think that might be a little pretentious to say, because there is something really artistic about refining a song to like an algorithmic perfection to top the charts, to sell more potato chips, whatever the thing is, right? It's just not for me. So I really like stuff that breathes, stuff that lives,
Hmm.
stuff that makes
And
me
when you say breathes, you mean especially the dynamics part, dynamic range?
dynamics is a huge part of that. But I think something that has soul ultimately, and life is dynamic. So, and in essence, yeah, life is dynamic. Emotions are dynamic. The world we pass through on a day to day is dynamic. Music is a reflection of that as a communication for life, um,
Hmm.
which sounds corny, but yeah,
Yeah, it's so interesting that I listen to a lot of genres, but one of them is electronic music. And like if you listen to drum and bass, dubstep, house, techno, all of these things, um, especially in the more energetic part of music, like especially dubstep, drum and bass, it can be so compressed. They're not looking for 14 loves. They're looking for 5 - 5.
yeah,
Like they're really hammering down the dynamic range. Um, and there is a point where I stopped. There is songs that actually I would actually like from a taste perspective, but I can't listen to them because when the drop hits, it's almost like there is no drop because it's so compressed that the lead synths and all of these things are so in your face
yeah,
that it doesn't work for me, even though it might be a good melody or something like that. And that I don't know, like, are we producing to meet the algorithm standards? Are we producing to, I don't know, why are we screaming so loud into the void? I don't understand why this is such a crazy trend. I mean, it's good that Spotify and all of these. I, let's not talk about Spotify. Let's say Tidal or Apple Music try to balance it to bring it to the same love,
mhm,
and that we have something like loves that it's trying to like find the same loudness. But yeah, it's crazy that when you reduce a -5 dB love to -14, I mean, it's just ridiculous to do that.
yeah. I agree. And Jacob Collier's music a lot of times plays with this idea of white space and low
Yeah,
dynamic and in a really cool way. Not always, but
yeah.
there definitely a few songs, especially in his early work, that really breathe intentionally, which I think is really cool. Have you heard of the
And that
Loudness Wars?
the what?
The Loudness Wars?
Yeah, I heard about it, but let me stay for Jacob a second. I mean, that's the reason why we're all even met, right?
Yeah,
Um, and it's so funny because did I mention it? I don't want. I hope I'm not repeating myself in the podcast, but um, he showed us the Hideaway song in a Logic session. I'm not sure if you were part,
yeah,
if you saw it.
yeah.
Um, and it was so interesting because it was his very first song, he said, that he ever did, and everything I know about Jacob is already in that song. It's so crazy. Like, first of all, the way he produces with 100, I don't know how many, 400 tracks, the way he records like stacked underneath each other,
Mhm.
small snippets, weird noises that are just there for once in an entire song.
Yeah,
Um, the way he starts out with a very clear idea that goes into a bit of crazy, I don't even know how to explain this, virtuous um, polyrhythm, some crazy chords that come back like tension release, all of these things, they're all in this song. And I find it so crazy that it's already in there. And what I wanted to say is, I mean, the binaural recording that I did, that you're, by the way, thank you for praising it so much. it's it's the Hideaway song, and it's just a remix of it or like a cover version, and
right.
it's of course only the first more or less verse and a chorus, so it's not even the entire song. But I'm building up onto a song that is already so much breathing, as you say. This has so much dynamic range because it really feels like every hit is every downbeat on the one that has a new chord in the especially the beginning. It's like a wave that comes over you, and it's like breathing out, like, and then it comes, you're breathing in again. It's to me, it really has this breath and this dynamic and this calmness, and everything is on purpose in this song. I really like it.
Yeah, and I like how you added the water sort of as a reflection to that concept too.
Yeah.
Comes in waves, so it's pretty cool.
Yeah. So I just had to put this to put my love for this song and this recording method and Jacob out there for a second. You were talking about loudness wars. Maybe you can add to, if you want to add to this, but we can also talk about loudness war.
Oh, I was really just harping on what you were talking about. And we don't have to go too much further into the whole dynamics conversation, but um, I wanted to say essentially like, and because you already know what it is, and maybe like the listeners don't, but it's this concept that there's a competitive atmosphere on dynamics, and a lot of it has to do with like advertising. And you can picture it like you're watching a TV show, and then it cuts to commercial. Well, the commercial's job is to sell you, let's use potato chips like we've been talking about. The commercial wants to sell you potato chips, and the best way to do that is to be as bold and as loud as it can and be in your face. And so you probably know, just watching TV, every once in a while you'll watch an old movie and it'll cut to commercial, and then all of a sudden it's blaring loud and you're like, oh, rushing to find the TV remote to turn it down because the commercial wants so badly to sell you potato chips that it's decided that dynamic range isn't important, and it's going to crush that floor and then turn the volume so far up that it's the only thing that you'll be able to hear echoing through your house. Well, I think a lot of movies, TV shows, music, algorithmic decision makers on Spotify, all that have slowly been etching towards this loudness thing, because if you're listening on their platform, their sound needs to be the biggest and boldest and loudest thing in your face. It needs to be recognized. It needs to be heard, um, which is at a detriment to the artistic objective of what a lot of the things we're creating is that music and the listening experience is pure dynamics. Our ears are such dynamic tools. Um, it doesn't fit in this marketing box where we need to basically compete with whatever else is happening before and after the program. So it's a really tragic element to experiencing art today, is that there's this dynamic wash that's happening in the media, and you see it in movies too. And like, I think less so than the technical perspective, there's almost this idea of we need to constantly come up with the next thing. We need to constantly come up with something that's going to compete with what happened before and what's coming next, so that we can be the loudest thing in the 15 minutes of fame, the social media era. And that's why you see, like, on Netflix, for example, they're coming out with a new major title every month, and almost all of them are terrible. It's because nobody is sitting down and thinking, let's intentionally create a work of art. They're thinking, we have a deadline to beat Hulu for the next release. And so we have to put something out, and it needs to be loud. It needs to be big. It needs to be, so not so much dynamics as a principle for this, but the dynamic conversation, the loudness wars, I think very much follows this competition thing that's ruining art. It's ruining, social media is a great example. You've got to, in order to be an artist, you have to put out 5 reels a week on Instagram or whatever. Um, Whereas I think a better focus of your art would be to sit there and actually create something that's intentional and takes time and energy and come to the table, go for the walk in the woods, find the bog full of frogs, you know? And everyone's got a different process, but I think this 15 minutes of fame era is ruining a lot of what is popular on the radio, you know? And it's tragic to me. Movies seem to be less good these days than they were in the past, and that's not always true. Music too is like instead of there's no more. I feel like there's no more classic albums anymore. It's just every week there's a new hip hop record or a new like whatever where people
Mm.
aren't people aren't really diving into art as much. They're diving into marketing. Um,
That's a whole like topic that we could dive into, and maybe we should. I'm not sure. I mean, there's also the democratization of music. I mean, everybody can open their laptop or, like make music. And
yeah,
let's not go into AI because that's a completely different topic. But what I want to say is when you're looking into this, you mentioned Netflix or movies, I see a difference in, is it corporate? Let's put the word capitalism out there. Is it really like, let's have it as a product. Let's have art as a product and sell it like a potato chip. Is it the same? It's more or less the same.
yeah,
And the other thing is, I think there are actually still very, very incredible musicians out there that make insanely good music, and really artistic music and all of these things. I just feel that there is no channel that gives them the possibility to be big. So when you're talking about classic albums, I think probably in the future, maybe in 50 years or even earlier, maybe it's very individual or maybe a small group of people to whom a classic album, what a classic album is to them. And then there is another group of people that didn't even hear from the artist. So I think it's going to be very individualized of what classic albums are, because I think they're still out there. It's just that maybe I've never heard of them because I don't even
yeah.
know that they're existing.
Uh,
And that is a bit sad, but also it's it's giving me a bit of FOMO, like fear of missing out, because I'm always trying to like find like digging. I'm since I'm in electronic music, I'm always digging for new music, especially of course for DJing, but also like for any type of music. And it's not that easy to find it, even though there's algorithms and all of these things. It's easy to find new music, of course, but these really like classical things like Jacob Collier, like things that are really world changing in my opinion, that's not so easy to find, because also they're not pushed, that they're not pushed into the front.
yeah, totally. Yeah, it's like Elvis Presley has left the building, and then every week there's a new Elvis Presley. You can't have the one big guy anymore, um, because there's so much out there, which is like an awesome thing that we have so much access to create these days, but also there's so much noise. You'll never really get to hear all the music that it's actually a good thing. I don't know why I'm not trying to push it into a bad light. Um, the competitive aspect of music making, I think, is bad for the art, good for the algorithm, but also like you said, we have so much access, um, and there is this FOMO idea that there's every week a new incredible artist is born, every day, and every day a new incredible song or movie or TV show is released, and um, it sucks that we all won't be able to experience that together like in the past, where it was like you go to the record store and there's one record on the shelf that's the new chart record, and it's the new guy, and he's an international phenomenon or whatever, or she. Um, I don't know. I guess it's just an interesting observation. The direction, the consumption of art has affected the production of art, because this corporatization of it wants to wants to push it into a place where you get a
Mm.
lot of static and the noise that you're looking for. There's a lot of crap out there, that you have to sift
So
through to.
now I'm intrigued. What is your, because now we're going to be in that individual space of what a classical album is, right?
Yeah.
What is your, do you have maybe top of mind, just maybe it doesn't have to be perfect, but top 3 most classic albums for you?
Oh, man, this is such a hard question. Yeah, I think, well, my favorite artist of all time, songwriting, music that really speaks to me is Ray LaMontagne, and I really love the album God Willin' and the Creek Don't Rise, which is just such a soulful, incredible it's a Southern soul album almost, but there's a lot of elements of, like, Americana folk in there, and then, of course, he's such an amazing performer, artist, and writer. The lyrics are awesome too. Um, that for me is a classic album that almost nobody else in the world even knows about, I think. Like, and I say that I don't mean nobody else in the world. But I mean even amongst Ray LaMontagne listeners, not a lot of people think that that's one of his best albums. For me, it's my favorite album of all time, so it's interesting. Um, there's a lot out there, man. There's so much. I'm looking through my Spotify right now because it's hard to answer that question and give you a serious answer. I really love I really love Jesse Volume 2, one of my favorites of all time as well. Um, and I know a lot of the listeners here will agree with that. But there's these little pockets for every genre, right? Because I don't listen to one genre. There's applications to music in so many different walks of life as a medium for communication. Like I was saying, the cocktail party lounge music is not the same kind of music I would enjoy by myself or on a car ride or whatever. I really like some techno album. Like I really love Tycho. Have you heard of Tycho? Tycho is a great
No,
art.
no,
They've got an album called Awake, and it's like IDM music. So it's EDM with instruments kind of interlaid into it. Really great album.
that's interesting. Tycho, what's the name?
Tycho, Tycho. It's really transit. It's a trance kind of.
That's the artist or the album name?
That's the artist. The album that I really like is called Awake.
Awake.
Yeah.
Okay.
Um, let's see. I love a lot of the classics. I listened to John Mayer a lot growing up. Uh, um, I love his trio album, Try. It's a great one. If you like blues, if you like rock and roll, I mean that's a fantastic record. I know a lot of people will agree with me there. Um, and then I just like oddball ones too. Like I really love Chet Atkins and some of his old Nashville ragtime guitar stuff. I don't know, I can't remember the name of his album, but he does this one song with Dolly Parton. Uh, and it's one of the most fantastic songs I've ever listened to be honest with you. It's him and Dolly playing, with what I imagine is just a single Omni mic in a room, and just kind of, like, joking around. You hear them, like, giggling and laughing and telling jokes in between recording the song,
Mm.
and they're such talented musicians that they're just playing along, and Dolly will just start talking halfway through the verse and be like, "Oh, Chet, you remember that time we were whatever?" And then they'll laugh, but then they'll keep playing. It's just, like, such a funny little folk country tune. I'm gonna find the name of it. Um
I bet, I guess people can find it. Chet Atkins and Dolly.
Dolly Parton, Chet Atkins, the song is called "Do I Ever Cross Your Mind?" And it's just this
Mm.
fantastic little folk tune, um, and the music, that kind of music too, I think is kinda quintessential to where I live in the world.
Okay, okay.
It speaks volumes to kind of a cultural identity here in the Southeast, which is that Nashville sound that people talk about, that is, I think, in a lot of ways been corrupted by radio pop since the '60s and '70s and '80s and stuff, but it's a great, great song. Gotta check it out. Do I Ever Cross Your Mind?
That's great. I have a lot to listen to because I'm not that much into this
Yeah.
kind of music. It's not that I don't like it, it's more that I don't know much. So perfect. Thank you.
Well, give me some stuff to listen to as well because
Oh, okay. Um Let me think. I mean, that's also just from the top of my head. If I really thought about it, probably I would have better answers, more
yeah,
crisp answers. Best albums. Let's not go to the really, really like. I'm trying to stay young, meaning
yeah,
that maybe 2000s and younger. Um, so D'Angelo Voodoo is definitely, definitely very much in up front.
that's a great record. I know that one.
That's crazy how good that is, just because it changed so much for the world. Um, I think that's probably something that I'm looking for as well. Like how much impact did it have? Also not for me, but how much ground did it break? Like, is it just something that's already been there or something new? In that vein, I guess Outcast, the Love Below. There is this double album. It's called the Boombox, and the first album is the Speaker Box, and that's the part where Big Boy. That's his album, and then the second album is the Love Below, and that's the Andre 3000 part. And
Yeah, okay.
there's something about it. It's really. I think you can listen to every song and not skip a song. It's so cool. Um, an album maybe I don't listen to anymore so much because it's very melancholic and sad, but Tracy Chapman, Let It Rain,
Oh yeah, yeah, okay.
that's such a great album.
Yeah.
Um it's I'm not sure if I still have the same emotional resonance to it, but when I was younger, oh my god,
That's a
I
good one.
melted away. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um Prince Musicology.
Okay.
That's my favorite album of Prince, Musicology. It's it's more a bit of soul-y. It's not that much poppy. I really like it. And uh, maybe the last one is Mayor Hawthorne. Mayor Hawthorne, A Strange Arrangement. That's very soul. It's like old school soul, but in a new style. Um, I really like that album.
I'm jotting all these down. I'm gonna take a listen.
Yeah, yeah. I'm interested in what you think.
Hey, do you ever listen to the band Wolfpack?
The the name rings a bell. Yeah.
So you're
Wolf.
German, right?
Yeah.
So they're an American they're an American band, but I guess they're all their parents are all German immigrants or something. There's some story behind it, but they called themselves the Wolfpack, but they wanted to they wanted to go back to their German roots, so they phonetically pronounced their name as Wolfpack, which I think is funny. But they're the funkiest band alive, man. It's straight up like old school bass, funk, um, and rhythm
I
guitars
think
and
you write them VULF, right?
yeah, Wolf.
Yeah. I think I heard them. Yeah, I like them. Yeah,
Oh man, they're one of my favorites too. I should have mentioned. I don't know why I couldn't think of them. Um, there's so much good music out there. It's hard to when you sit
yeah.
there and you ask
It's
someone
so
to talk,
hard. Yeah.
it's very hard to actually list things off.
Oh, Parachutes by Coldplay. The
Oh,
album is also so nice.
one of my favorites of all time as well.
Yeah.
That's such a good
Just
record.
thought of that as well. So yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, if you start thinking about it, oh my god.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, there is one more topic that I want to mention or want to explore, and that is actually now very much going into Hideaway.
Okay,
And that's one reason of why I wanted to talk to you, because I wanted to know the origins of how it came to be that this I just call it the night under the arch, like the arch. When we performed music outside of the, or not we, when other people performed music outside, and I was a witness. Um, how did you? How did it come to be? Because you're the more or less, and I have to say this, and please take it without much humility. You created this evening like that, you know. But I mean, there were so many spaces where people could go and do breakouts to do music, but then there was this beautiful place outside, and the only thing I heard from Gavin was, "We're going to do songs, and it's going to be only originals, no covers, no remixes." And you were so strict on that, and I loved
Yeah.
it so much.
Yeah.
How did you come up to this? Like, why were you so, let's say, enthusiastic about this kind of
Sure.
doing it like that?
Yeah, well, I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast that there are things that drive us artistically, musically, as a performer, or as artists. For me, I don't have any interest whatsoever being on a stage. I love, and don't get me wrong, I love the jazz standards. I love like the highly technical stuff as a listener and as a dabbler, as just as much as any other person. But I got to Hideaway Retreat day one, night one, very early on, and realized on the very first night that I was not going to fit into these like official breakout camper jam rooms, because every room that I got into, there were like 4 or 6 insanely virtuosic musicians that were playing Coltrane or whatever, you know. And these are all Bandcamp nerds that come from these schools or whatever, and they're like top of their class classical pianists. And I think that's phenomenal. I think it was amazing to watch some of these guys, go and
Yeah,
play
yeah,
what they were playing, but to me, I didn't fit into that mold as a musician, and I never have. What my driving force is as a musician has always been that little jittery feeling you get when you write the most amazing piece of music, and I noticed that I looked around me and I noticed, like, there's this room of 6 or so musicians on the stage playing insane stuff, and then 30 of us standing around, like, holding our violin being like, "Oh, okay. Well, let me know when I can come and play my fiddle, and I'll jump in," and there was no room for that in a Coltrane song or whatever the standard is that they were playing. So I realized quickly that if I wanted to participate, during the off hours, which sort of became the focal point of the entire trip for me, to call them off hours is
yeah.
kind of
It's
an injustice,
crazy.
but,
It's crazy. Yeah,
I needed to create the space f to for people that can't participate in these, like, "Hey, play this song that we all learned in jazz school," kinda sessions, and so that's what I did. And it started out, I think towards the later half of night 1, with me and maybe 3 other kids playing guitar in that archway, and people would come up and they would try to play with us. And they would be like, "Oh, well, what song are we playing?" I'm like, "Well, in this space, we're trying to focus on not playing a song and letting the music happen organically." And then they're like, and some people were like, "That doesn't make sense. There's no chord chart? What do you mean by that?" And I was like, "Well, I that's what it is. That's what we're doing. And if, you let this person play their original tune." And the other rule, that was important for the jam circle was play an original song, but that was the first rule. But the second rule is, for as the songwriter, allow space for other people to collaborate. That was rule number 2. That was a major part of it. Um, and I think a lot of people were feeling the same way that I was feeling, that there's no place for me as a singer, a classical singer, to jump in on this fusion jazz session or whatever. Um, so allowing for space for in the bridge or the hook section to open up for the song to become whatever it could be was super important. And by the end of the week, we were having these jam circles so often, and they got so big that the camp director guy, Bill, I think his name is Billy or something, came and said, "Hey, we're gonna give you an
Billy. Yeah,
official block on the schedule to do this because it's becoming the largest participatory group that we have on the campus. So that was really special for me, just to be able to my contribution, I think, to music and to collaboration is to create the space. I'm not the best musician. I'm not the best songwriter, but what I understood is that in order for everyone to really get the full work of what this should be, there needs to be a place for the harp player to jump in on a traditional or like just to jump in on a song session or what we were playing the Jewish prayer song or whatever, and it's like
Yeah.
when does a Saint does a New Orleans style tuba jump in on that? Well, let's find out, because those two things could clash in the same world if we allow the space to happen. And so I'll be honest, I wanted to create a space sort of like the Bog Frogs, where we just need to tune our antennas collectively and let
Hmm.
whatever happens happens. This isn't a Coltrane song. This is whatever the airwaves decide to allow to shine down onto our circle. And so I think at the peak of the evening we had, I want to say it was we had close to 100 people out there. It was like 80 to
Yeah,
100
yeah,
people.
yeah. It was big. It was big.
And it was so much fun,
Yeah.
finding that space and allowing that space for creativity and letting other people show their music, where there was no other way to invite, creativity outside of how can you write a jazz lick over this song that's been played 1,000 times in concert halls.
And I really want to thank you for this because, as you said, it's almost like it really made the trip for me. Like, I don't know. Like, I think maybe you might have been, and I know you're a very humble guy, but you might have been one of the key people in the entire Hideaway because you created this space where things unraveled that weren't even remotely anybody thought it could be possible. And it's so interesting to be able to give musicians that are all maybe not the most virtuous, craziest, best at performing, but give creative output and give space to creative output. And it showed. It was so insane. And of course, the musicianship was usually at least above average, but sometimes on a very crazy level that could have some people probably could have held up with Jacob on stage, like this level of
Yeah.
music.
Oh, you could quantify. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really crazy. So yeah, I just wanted to thank you for that because it really made my trip and it made the entire experience to what it was, and depth and it made me also be more bold about doing this recording in the first place. I mean, Elizabeth had a very strong um, part in that as well, but still, I mean, it inspired me and inspired others. So thank you for that. Um,
Well, I appreciate that. I'm not gonna take the credit. I know, yeah, a lot of the most important part of the space was not that I, quote unquote created it. It was really awesome to have that space where everyone was able to share, and I couldn't have done it without everyone coming together to
no, that's true, but and of course, I think Ryan Ridley also was very he was always there, and
yeah.
also I think from the start and always participating. There was some that had a very large role in that. Yeah, but thank you. And there's one question that I'm also very intrigued by. I noticed that, especially this one night where Alex was performing her rap and like where
That
Blake
was
was
amazing.
singing and all of these things, and Drew came with wildflowers, and it was really the most crazy night. And I really noticed that because I found it so crazy. I was almost, if I wasn't had tears coming down my face, at least I was close to like crying with almost every performance because it was so connective and so beautiful. And the soon the performance was over, maybe like 3 or 5 seconds later, you were like, okay, who's next? Who's next? Like you were completely in the mode of like facilitating what's going to happen and who's going to perform. And I was like, okay, is he, how did you, how were you able to tune out of that insane moment where I felt like, okay, I could die happy now after this performance? And you were like, okay, who's next? Like, ooh, what's going on? Like, here, I have the next name on my list. Like, it was so interesting to me. Like, what, like, how did it touch? How did the performance touch you? And how did you get out of the touch, like being touched in that moment and like going back to, we have a structure, we have a next performance going on?
Um, Great question. I think I was I was so I was so enamored by what was happening, like, in those songs that the moment felt so incredible to hear a 30-part harmony to somebody's original song that they would have never envisioned could be arranged and orchestrated with a string section, and then you've got the brass section over here, and then these guys are doing this thing with a bongo. Um, it was so magical that I didn't want that to end, and I felt like if somebody didn't force the experience to continue to happen, that it would have fizzled away. And this actually goes really deeply into the antenna conversation because I felt that we had entered a space where our antennas were collectively tuned. But in order to tune your antenna, like picture an old radio or TV, sometimes you got to hold those antennas in just the right place. And if you let go, well, it's going to flop down and you lose that frequency. And I did not want that to happen. That was my thing is like, I have to enjoy this as much as I can enjoy this. But also, if I don't sit here and hold these antennas up, it's going to fizzle out. Which was a big part of the decision to say, no, we're not doing covers over here. If you want to do a cover, they're doing a really cool cover room over here where they have a full band drum set. You can do that over there. This space is for finding the frequency. And so if you'd like to find the frequency, we'd love to have you over here. Um, so I
Yeah,
needed that I
that's,
needed that frequency to continue, because I
mm,
was feeling exactly how you were feeling, on the verge of tears for some of these songs. They were so incredible, but I didn't want it to die. That was my I was anxious about it, actually, that I was like, "If I don't continue this, if I don't force the next person to get up on stage, we're gonna lose it, and we can't lose it."
yeah, yeah, I'm with you. And I'm very happy that you were able to got to really, to me, it probably, I sense that it was almost like you're separating from the experience now to get back into this facilitating mode. But it was so crazy to me because I'm like, that's the last thing I could have thought of. Like, who's next? Who's next? And then trying to figure out who's going to play next. So
Yeah.
thank you as well for that.
Well, thanks for having me on here, and thanks for talking it through. It was a lot of fun to talk to you, and it was a lot of fun to have that experience with you and everybody else. That
Yeah,
trip and particularly that jam circle and particularly that night that you mentioned with Alex doing the freestyle rap was for me was the most quintessential and raw musical experience that I've had in my almost
yeah.
30 years of going to concerts, listening to music, anything I've ever done musically. That was the most insane and raw and disorganized and yet still orchestrated thing I've ever seen in my life, and it was so much fun.
I think to me this is as important as, I don't know, probably top three memories with like my wedding and like this level of how much it meant to me. So it was, yeah, it's really insane.
Yeah.
So yeah, Gavin, thank you. Will you come? Will you go in to Italy? Will you be there?
Man, Philip, I really want to, but I don't think I can afford to. It's so far away from
Yeah,
me. It's a lot of money.
yeah, it
I would
is.
love, love, love to do it, but just getting to Italy and is kind of a challenge for me. So probably not. Um, but I will leave you with this, that if you decide to go, because I saw on the Facebook page you might go. If you decide to go,
Maybe.
if you do, carry my torch, you know? Go
Yeah.
out there and do the jam circle again, share the videos, figure out a way to get that thing rolling again because like you said, that was the quintessential Jacob Collier Hideaway retreat experience for me and for many others that I spoke to were like, this was the reason I came. And I didn't know it because I was looking at the scheduled programming, but this was off the books and it was the coolest, most amazing part of it. And for me, for I don't know
Mm.
who else enjoyed it that way, but I certainly did.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I'm not very much connected to the Dreamcatcher people, but somebody should give the torch to get the torch from you. Yeah.
Hopefully they do.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, Gavin. Thank you so much for talking to me. Was nice to catch up.
Yeah, yeah, let's do it again sometime. Let's stay connected.
Yeah.
I know
Yeah.
you work on music stuff. I do too. It's a hobby of mine. I don't know if you're full time like music guy or what you.
No. No. No.
Um,
Unfortunately, not. No.
well,
No.
I'd love to collaborate at some point in any place where we can.
Yeah.
Or if I even just send some raw stuff over, you can send some raw stuff to me. We can figure out where our heads collide on ideas, and I don't know. Maybe it's something cool. Maybe it's something worth doing. So let me know.
Yeah. It would be fun. Would be fun. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Bye, Gavin.
Bye bye.